seriousness were among the few strict requests my husband Joshua ever made during our 24 years of marriage. I always honored his wishes, even when my curiosity was piqued during those rare moments when he talked about his childhood in Canada on the property he left behind. But now Joshua was gone, taken suddenly by a heart attack that no one, not even me, had anticipated. After 24 years together, I was left a widow at 52, with a resentful daughter and an emptiness in my chest where certainty once resided. Mrs. Mitchell, the voice of Joshua's lawyer, Mr. Winters, interrupted my thoughts. We sat in his office, lined with wood paneling, 2 weeks after the funeral, with death's finality reduced to paperwork and signatures. There's one more item, he said. If you're watching, please click like and subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments where in the world you're from. He slid a small box across his desk. Inside, there was an antique brass key attached to a maple leaf keychain, and a sealed envelope with my name written in Joshua's precise handwriting. What is this? I asked, turning the heavy key over in my hand. Your husband bought a property in Alberta, Canada, 3 years ago. According to his instructions, you were only to be told about it after he had passed away. Mr. Winters adjusted his glasses. The deed has been transferred into your name. All taxes are paid for the next 5 years. A property in Canada? I struggled to grasp this news. Joshua didn't own any land outside our home. It's called Maple Creek Farm. Apparently, it was his childhood home, although the deed shows it changed ownership several times before he repurchased it. The farm, the place he forbade me to visit, the place that made his gentle face harden whenever it was mentioned. Mrs. Mitchell, there's something else you should know, Mr. Winters said softly. The property has become quite valuable lately. There have already been inquiries about whether it's available. Valuable? It's a farm, yes. But according to what I've heard, significant oil deposits were found in the area about 18 months ago. Your husband turned down several offers from energy companies. My mind was filled with questions. Joshua had never mentioned oil, money, or any plans to buy property. We had lived comfortably on his engineering salary, and my income as a high school English teacher. But we were not wealthy. How had he managed to purchase a farm? And why had he kept it a secret from me? I hesitated as I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, then I have left you too soon. I am sorry. There are so many things I should have told you, but I couldn't face them. The farm is now yours. I have spent the past 3 years transforming it from the rundown place of my childhood into something beautiful, something worth of you. I know I asked you never to go there. Now I am freeing you from that promise. In fact, I want you to visit just once before making any decisions about it. On the desk in the main house is a laptop. The password is the day we met, followed by your maiden name. I love you, Kat, more than you'll ever realize. Joshua. I clutched the letter tightly to my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even from beyond the grave, Joshua still had surprises. I need to see this place, I finally said. Of course, Mr. Winters nodded. But I should warn you, Joshua's family in Canada has challenged the will. His brothers say he wasn't capable of making that decision when he bought back the family land. That's absurd. Joshua was the most rational person I ever knew. Still, they have filed legal objections. With the property's recent increase in value, things might get complicated. I slipped the key into my pocket, a strange sense of determination filling me. I'm going to Canada today, Mr. Winters. 2 days later, after quickly booking flights and taking a long drive through the Alberta countryside, I found myself standing before sturdy wooden gates marked Maple Creek Farm in wrought iron. Beyond, the property stretched out far beyond what I had expected, with gentle rolling hills, stands of maple trees turning brilliant gold with autumn, and in the distance, a large farmhouse surrounded by several freshly painted outbuildings. This was no neglected family farm. It was a grand estate. I turned the key smoothly in the gate's lock. As I drove along the winding gravel driveway, my heart beat faster with both excitement and nervousness. What secrets had Joshua kept hidden here? What part of himself had he kept away from me all these years? The farmhouse was an impressive 2-story building with a wide porch and large windows. Nothing about it hinted at the pain Joshua had always linked to his childhood home. Instead, this place looked loved, carefully restored, and reimagine. My hands trembled as I turned the key in the front door. The lock made a soft click, and the door swung open, allowing me to step into my husband's hidden world. What I saw inside took my breath away, causing my knees to feel weak as I reached out to hold the doorframe for balance. The entrance led into a spacious great room with open beams overhead and a stone fireplace. But it wasn't the structure that left me stunned. It was the horses, not living animals, but artwork everywhere I looked. There were stunning paintings of horses in full gallop across vast fields, detailed sculptures showing their strength and elegance, and photographs of majestic breeds framed simply in black. My lifelong passion, the one dream Joshua always supported but never truly understood, was displayed all around me in what felt like a gallery dedicated to my greatest love. And there, on a desk by the window that looked out over endless fields, was a silver laptop with a single red rose resting on its closed lid. Before I could take another step, I heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel, signaling another arrival. Through the front window, I saw a black SUV pull up behind my rental car. 3 men stepped out, each bearing the unmistakable features of the Mitchell family that Joshua had inherited: tall frames, dark hair, and strong jewlines. The Mitchell brothers had arrived, and judging by their stern expressions, they hadn't come to welcome the widow to Canada. They walked toward the house with the confident steps of people who believed they belonged there. I quickly closed and bolted the front door, my heart pounding. Through the side window, I watched them stop on the porch, whispering among themselves before the oldest, a silver-haired man with a sharp gaze sharply rapped on the door. "Mrs. Mitchell, we know you're in there. We should talk." His voice carried the same Canadian accent that had softened Joshua's speech when he was tired or upset. I stayed quiet, stepping back from the door. Joshua's warnings about his family had always been vague but firm. Now, with their unexpected arrival, my instincts urged me to be careful. The knocking resumed, louder and more persistent. "Catherine, I'm Robert Mitchell, Joshua's older brother. These are our brothers, Alan and David. We're here about the farm," a voice called out again. Of course they were. They weren't here to talk about Joshua or to meet the wife he had loved for 24 years. They were here because the property suddenly seemed valuable. I looked at the laptop sitting on the desk. Any answers I needed might be on there, not with the strangers on the porch. Ignoring the growing force of the knocking, I moved to the desk, turned on the computer, and typed in the password Z05151998 Mitchell. The screen flickered on immediately, revealing a folder labeled for Catherine. Inside, there were hundreds of video files, each labeled with a date. They started from 2 weeks ago, the day after his funeral, and stretched out a whole year into the future. With shaky fingers, I pressed the first one. Joshua's face appeared on the screen. It wasn't the thin, pale version from his last months, but healthy and lively, filmed some time ago. He smiled directly at the camera, showing that familiar crooked grin that always made my heart flutter. "Hello, Kat. If you're watching this, then I've gone and you've come to the farm despite all my promises not to make you." He chuckled softly. "I should have known you wouldn't be able to resist, especially after Winters told you about it." A lump caught in my throat. Even now, he knew me so well. I made a video for every day of your first year without me. 1 year of me keeping you company while you grieve. 1 year of explaining everything I should have told you when I was alive. He looked down briefly, then back at the camera with resolve. He started by explaining why I had gone back to the farm I had once sworn never to return to. The knocking outside had stopped. Through the window, I could see the men walking back to their vehicle, gathering papers, and talking quietly with serious expressions. Joshua continued, 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a heart condition I inherited from my father. The doctors told me I had 2 to 5 years left. I chose not to tell you or Jenna. I didn't want pity, nor did I want our final years to be overshadowed by the fear of death. His eyes softened. I longed to live completely with you until the very end, not to slowly fade away in front of you. A wave of shock and anger swept through me. He hadn't told me about his diagnosis, had made medical choices without involving me, and had taken away my chance to prepare or to cherish our remaining time together fully. "I know you're upset right now," he said, as if he could hear my thoughts. "And you have every reason to feel that way, but I hope you will understand that I chose this out of love, not deception." The men outside were now on their phones, walking back and forth along the gravel driveway with the frustration of someone feeling entitled but blocked. When I received my diagnosis, I decided to spend whatever time I had left building something meaningful for you. You have always loved horses and often talked about someday owning land where you could raise them. So I went to the last place anyone would expect me to visit, the farm I escaped from at 18, vowing never to return. He leaned in closer to the camera. "What my brothers don't know is that I legally purchased the farm from our father before he passed away. The old man was broke after many failed ventures and had spent the family's savings on alcohol. He sold it to me for much less than its value, desperate for money, and made me promise to keep it a secret from my brothers, who still believed they would inherit it someday. That is what explained the legal dispute. They believed they had rights to the property that Joshua had legally purchased. The farm was in ruins when I acquired it, just as it was when I was a child. But this time, I had the means to restore it. Every business trip over the past 3 years, I was here overseeing renovations and working on ways to improve things for you." Outside, the brothers had approached the door once more. This time, the eldest Robert held up a document against the window for me to see, a court order of some kind. Joshua continued in the video, his face growing stern. "They will come for it," he said. "My brothers never wanted the farm until last year, when oil was discovered in the area. Suddenly, the worthless land they used to laugh at me for buying became valuable. They will try everything to take it away." One of the brothers was on the phone again, his face showing a sense of victory as he ended the call. "In the bottom drawer of this desk, there is a blue folder containing all the legal documents you need. The farm is clearly yours. I made sure of it." Joshua's face softened once more. "But Kat, whether you decide to keep it or sell it, that choice is entirely yours. I built this place for you and filled it with beauty so you could enjoy it, but I don't want it to become a heavy burden." As I watched, a police cruiser with markings of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police pulled up the driveway. The brothers observed its arrival with looks of satisfaction. "One more thing," Joshua said. "In the stables, you'll find 6 horses, breeds you've admired over the years. The staff I've hired will continue caring for them, whether you're here or not. They're my final gift to you, along with everything you need to enjoy them." The video ended, frozen on Joshua's smiling face, as a knock at the door intensified, sounding more assertive this time. "Mrs. Mitchell, RCMP, we need you to open the door, please." Taking a deep breath, I closed the laptop, grabbed the blue folder from the drawer, and prepared myself to face whatever was coming next. As I reached for the door handle, my phone started to ring. Jenna, our daughter, was calling from home. I hesitated before answering, and she said, "Jenna, now is not a good time. Mom." Her voice was tense and full of anger. "Why didn't you tell me about Dad's farm or the oil? His brothers just called me offering a fair settlement if I helped them challenge the will. What's really going on?" It seemed they had already contacted my daughter. The realization sparked a protective, fierce feeling inside me. They weren't just trying to go after me. They were attempting to manipulate my grieving daughter. I promised I would explain everything later, watching the police officer talk with the brothers. "But Jenna, please don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. These men are not our friends." "Mom, if there's money involved, this isn't about the money," she interrupted. And I was surprised by the strength in my voice as I said, "This is about what your father wanted. Please trust me on this." After a pause, she let out a sigh. "Fine, but please call me back as soon as you can." I hung up and opened the door to find a young RCMP officer standing there, flanked by 3 Mitchell men whose faces showed a mix of smugness and outright hostility. "Mrs. Mitchell, I am Constable Wilson. These men have a court order requesting an inspection of the property as part of an ongoing estate dispute." I kept a calm smile, drawing on the strength Joshua had always admired in me. "Of course, Constable, but I believe you should see these first." I reached out and held out the blue folder that contained Joshua's documents. My husband had anticipated this very situation. The oldest brother, Robert, stepped forward with a dismissive wave. Family property disputes are complicated, Constable. My sister-in-law is understandably upset and confused. Actually, I interrupted. I am neither emotional nor confused. I am a widow standing on property that is legally mine, facing 3 strangers who happen to share my late husband's DNA. I approached the officer and said, I would appreciate it if you could review these documents before anyone enters my property. The constable took the folder with a neutral look on his face and started examining the contents. The Mitchell brothers looked at each other, their confidence starting to fade for the first time. I thought about Joshua's video, the secret he kept to protect Jenna and me from unnecessary pain, and the wonderful gift he had created in his final years. No matter what game his brothers were playing, I was resolved not to lose the last meaningful sign of my husband's love without a fight. The officer looked up from the papers and his expression shifted. These seem to be in order, Mrs. Mitchell. There is a clear deed transfer, notarized statements, and even certified bank records of the original purchase. He then addressed the brothers directly. Gentlemen, I do not see any reason to force an inspection at this time. This is a matter for the civil courts. Robert's face flushed with anger. This is simply unacceptable. That woman has no right. I interjected calmly. She is Joshua Mitchell's wife, and I have every reason to be here. As the brothers reluctantly moved towards their vehicle, followed by the apologetic constable, I felt a strange mix of loss and discovery. The husband I thought I knew completely had been hiding things, some painful, others surprisingly beautiful. Now I faced a decision. Should I retreat to the safety of my familiar life or fully accept this unexpected legacy and the struggle that came with it? I closed the door, went back to the desk, and reopened the laptop. Tomorrow's video was waiting, promising more pieces of the man I loved, pieces I was only now beginning to truly understand. Outside, the Mitchell brothers might have lost this small battle, but their expressions as they drove away made something clear. The battle for Maple Creek Farm was only just beginning. I spent that night at our farmhouse, surrounded by the signs of his secret labor of love. Sleep was hard to find, my mind busy with all I had learned. Joshua's hidden illness, the changes made to the farm, his brother's plans to take control of it, and the hundreds of video messages waiting on the laptop. At dawn, I finally took a proper walk around the property. The main house was beautifully restored, combining original farmhouse features with modern conveniences. Every room seemed to be thoughtfully designed to suit my tastes, from the library filled with first editions of my favorite novels, to the sunroom that looked out over the eastern pastures, perfect for enjoying my morning coffee. But what truly took my breath away were the stables. As Joshua had shown in his video, 6 stunning horses crowded the spotless stalls. There was an Andalusian, a Fian, 2 quarter horses, a thoroughbred, and a gentle Appaloosa that softly nickered as I approached. "Good morning, ma'am." The voice startled me. A man in his early 60s stepped out from the tack room, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I am Ellis. Your husband hired me to take care of the stables," I said, offering my hand. "Catherine Mitchell," I added, though I guessed he already knew that. He nodded softly, a gentle smile touching the corners of his eyes. "Mr. Mitchell often spoke of you during his visits, mentioning your natural way with horses that he never quite mastered. You knew my husband well." Ellis paused for a moment, as if revealing more than he usually liked. "I suppose he was here each month over the past 3 years, handling everything personally. He never left a decision to someone else if he could make it himself." That sounded like Joshua, methodical, involved, attentive to every detail. "The black Fian there," Ellis continued, nodded towards a magnificent stallion watching us with intelligent eyes. "That's Midnight. Your husband spent months tracking him down specifically. He said it reminded him of a horse in a painting you loved." My heart tightened. The Stubbs painting of a black horse against a stormy sky. I had admired it at a museum 20 years ago, and Joshua remembered. Did he? I hesitated, unsure how to ask. "Did my husband ever talk to you about his health?" A shadow crossed Ellis's weathered face. "Not directly, But over the past 6 months, he pushed himself harder, worked longer hours, added more features to the property, as if racing against a clock only he could see. The confirmation hurt, but it also explained the intense drive I'd noticed in Joshua during his last months. I had blamed it on work stress, never imagining he was building all this while knowing his time was running out. His brothers were here yesterday, I said, watching Ellis carefully. His expression grew harder. They have been circling since oil was discovered on nearby properties, suddenly showing a strong interest in the family farm they hadn't visited in many years. What can you tell me about them? Ellis secured a stall door before answering. Robert is the oldest, runs an investment firm in Toronto, and has always seemed to act as if he was doing Joshua a favor by even acknowledging him. Alan is the middle sibling, a lawyer with a smooth tongue, while David, the youngest, followed Robert into finance, always lingering in his shadow. Their relationship with Joshua is strained, hardly enough to describe it. From what I've heard, they were harsh and tormenting as children. These city boys visited the farm reluctantly, looking down on him for choosing to stay and help his father-in-law run the place. Ellis shook his head. When Joshua returned to buy the property, they mocked him for spending money on what they considered worthless land, right up until the Petersons struck oil on two nearby properties. This matched the pieces Joshua had shared over the years: his difficult childhood, his escape to the United States for college, and his reluctance to talk about his Canadian family. They will return, I told myself more than Ellis. Count on it, he replied grimly, nodding. But Mr. Mitchell was ready for that. He always stayed 3 steps ahead. At the house, I forced myself to eat breakfast before opening the laptop for today's video. Joshua appeared on the screen, sitting in what I now recognize as the farm's library. Good morning, Kat. I hope you slept well in our new home. He smiled, that crooked smile I missed with a deep longing. Today, I want to show you something special. The camera moved as he carried it through the house and down a hallway I hadn't yet explored, stopping at a locked door. This room is just for you. The key is in the top drawer of the bedside table. The antique silver one with the horse engraving. I paused the video, went to the master bedroom, and found the key exactly where he described. Following Joshua's route from the video, I pinpointed the door, unremarkable and at the end of the east wing. The key turned easily in the lock. I pushed the door open and gasped. Inside was a fully equipped art studio, filling the large corner room, illuminated by perfect northern lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Easels, canvases, paints, brushes, everything an artist might wish for, were arranged with careful attention. I hadn't painted in 20 years. After college, I put my artistic dreams aside to focus on teaching, supporting us financially while Joshua built his engineering career to raise Jenna. Over time, the days of painting had become a distant hope, then a bittersweet memory of a different path. The video continued, Joshua's voice pulling me back to the laptop I carried. You gave up so much for us, Kat. Your painting was the first sacrifice. Though you never voiced any complaints, I always promised myself I would someday give this back to you. Tears blurred my sight as I looked around the studio. The high-quality art supplies, the inspiration books neatly arranged on shelves, and the north-facing windows that offered steady, perfect light, all stood out in my mind. There's one more thing, Joshua continued. Check the cabinet below the window seat. I moved to the cushioned window seat that looked out over the eastern pasture, now bathed in the morning sunshine. Just beneath it, built into the wall, was a cabinet I might have missed if not for Joshua's guidance. Inside, I found a flat archival box. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid, then sank to my knees in shock. My paintings, dozens of them, were inside. All those pieces I created during college, the work I thought had been lost during our moves over the years. Joshua had kept them safe, protected them, guarded them for 20 years until he could bring them back to me in this perfect space. On top rested a small canvas I recognized immediately. It was my final project before graduation, a self-portrait of a young woman looking forward, her eyes shining with the promise of new possibilities. Joshua had asked me to keep it until I finished. Next to it was a handwritten note in his careful handwriting. She's still in there, Kat. The woman who painted with such passion and vision. I've given you the space. The rest is up to you. I squeezed the note to my chest, feeling a mix of love and sadness at once. Joshua had truly seen me in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be seen in years. The sound of cars on the gravel driveway pulled me out of this emotional moment. I moved to the studio window and watched as two cars approached, the familiar black SUV of the Mitchell brothers, and behind it, a sleek silver Mercedes I instantly recognized. Jenna had arrived, and from the way she stepped out of her car and confidently headed toward the brothers, it seemed they had already begun working on her. My daughter, Joshua's daughter, with her father's dark hair and my stubborn chin, was smiling and shaking hands with the uncle she had never met. Whatever fragile peace I had found in Joshua's posthumous gifts vanished in the face of this new complication. The fight for Maple Creek Farm had just become much more personal. I watched from the window as Jenna exchanged friendly greetings with her uncles, her body language open and welcoming. At 27, our daughter had her father's analytical mind and my determination, but lacked Joshua's patience and my caution. She had always been quick to form opinions and slow to change them. My phone buzzed with a message from her. Arrived with Uncle Robert and the others. Coming in now. We need to talk, Uncle Robert. They had known each other for less than a day, and already she was talking about family connections. I slipped Joshua's note into my pocket, shut the studio door behind me, and prepared to meet this new alliance. They entered without knocking. Jenna, taking advantage of her daughter's privilege, went ahead, with her brothers following like wolves behind an unwitting guide. Mom. Jenna gave me a quick hug, then stepped back, her eyes scanning the grand entryway. This place is incredible. Why didn't Dad ever tell us about it? Before I could reply, Robert moved forward, his strong resemblance to Joshua showing clearly in the morning light. Catherine, I believe we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. We were caught off guard by your sudden appearance, just as you were by ours. His tone was friendly, but the calculating look in his eyes told another story. Beside him, Alan and David kept carefully neutral expressions, although I noticed Alan clutching a leather portfolio that likely contained legal papers. Jenna, I said, ignoring Robert entirely. I thought we agreed you wouldn't get involved with your father's brothers until we had a chance to discuss things. She blushed slightly. They called again this morning with a very sensible offer. I felt I should at least listen to them face to face. Her chin lifted defiantly, the same way she did as a teenager when challenging her curfew. Besides, they are my family too. Family you didn't even know about until yesterday, I gently reminded her. Only because Dad prevented us from knowing, she argued, just as he kept this whole place a secret. Don't you find that strange? What else was he hiding? The question pressed uncomfortably close to the revelations from Joshua's videos. He had kept his illness, his property purchase, and his pursuit of his artistic dreams from me a secret, but his reasons were born out of love, not trickery. Your father had complicated relationships with his brothers, I said softly. He had reasons for maintaining some distance, Robert waved dismissively. Old history, sibling disagreements, especially in tough families like ours. What truly matters now is moving forward together. Exactly, Jenna thought, with the seriousness of someone convinced they were being perfectly reasonable. Uncle Robert has explained everything. This farm has been in the Mitchell family for many generations. Dad bought it from Grandpa Mitchell, but it was always intended to be shared among the brothers someday. I held back a sigh. They had been working on her for less than a day, and already she was questioning their version of events, and the sudden interest in the property wouldn't have anything to do with the oil discovery? I asked softly. Alan stepped forward, opening his folder. The situation with the mineral rights is only one part of the complicated legal picture. We have prepared a fair settlement offer that respects Joshua's wishes while recognizing the Mitchell family's long-standing claim to the land. We are ready to be very generous, Robert added, resting a grandfatherly hand on Jenna's shoulder. A 1/3 share for you, Catherine. 1/3 for Jenna, and the remaining third divided among us brothers. Everyone benefits. Jenna looked at me with anticipation, clearly already convinced by the proposal. It makes sense, Mom. We don't need this huge property. We could sell everything, walk away with millions, and keep the family together. Your father specifically left this land to me, I said, meeting Robert's gaze steadily. Not to you, not to his brothers. Out of confusion and misplaced feelings, Robert responded smoothly. Joshua wasn't thinking clearly in his later years. A sudden surge of anger swept through me. My husband was completely sane until the day he passed away, so why all this secrecy now? David finally spoke, his voice softer than his brother's, but just as firm. Why hide the property purchase from his wife and daughter? Why the complicated dealings with the lawyer? These actions didn't seem like those of a man acting logically. I thought about the videos, the renovated farm, the art studio, each part carefully arranged as a final gift. None of it indicated any confusion or poor judgment. Mom, Jenna said gently, I know this is tough. Dad left you, left both of us, and now we're uncovering all these secrets. But this plan makes good financial sense. We'd both be secure for life. The door swung open behind them, and Ellis appeared, his face tired but worried. Is everything all right, Mrs. Mitchell? I noticed the vehicles arriving. The brothers turned around, clearly annoyed by the disturbance. Robert's eyes narrowed. This is a family matter. Ellis is my employee, I said firmly. He's welcome in my home. Actually, Alan interrupted, his employment status is one of the assets we are still disputing, waiting for our legal claim to be settled. Ellis held his ground. Mr. Mitchell hired me personally, and he made me promise to look after the place and Mrs. Mitchell if anything happened to him. We will be reviewing all staff appointments, Robert said dismissively. I had heard enough. I believe it's time for all of you to leave. I looked directly at the brothers, then softened my gaze when it reached Jenna. Except you, of course. You're always welcome to stay. Are you not even considering their offer? Jenna asked, surprised. I will review any written proposal with my own lawyer, I answered. But I won't be pressured in my own home. Robert's mask of friendliness slipped, revealing the tough businessman underneath. This property is worth tens of millions, along with the oil rights. We can settle this peacefully, or we can make things very complicated. Is that a threat? I asked more calmly than I was feeling. He called it a reality check. You're a school teacher from Minnesota facing a legal fight against opponents with much more available resources. Joshua probably meant well, but he put you in a position that's nearly impossible to win. I thought of the blue folder with careful documentation, the videos showing Joshua's thoughtful planning, and the transformed property he had created as his final act of love. I spoke softly. I believe my husband knew exactly what he was doing. Now please leave. Jenna, you're welcome to stay for lunch if you'd like. She looked caught between me and her newly discovered uncles. After a moment, she said, I think I'll go with them for now. We have more to talk about. She quickly kissed my cheek. Think about the offer, Mom, please. I watched them leave, a feeling of emptiness growing in my chest. In just one day, my daughter had been drawn into the world of men Joshua had spent his life avoiding. Whatever they were telling her seemed to be convincing her. I could see it in how open she was, how quickly she accepted their point of view. Ellis waited until their cars had driven out of sight before speaking. Mrs. Mitchell, there's something you should know, something your husband asked me not to mention unless it was absolutely necessary. I turned to him, feeling tired, yet trying to stay alert. What is it? It's about the size of the property and what's really hidden here. He nodded toward the stables. We should take a walk. Some things shouldn't be talked about inside, where walls could be listening. As I followed him across the yard, the morning sun shone on the lovely farm my husband had built secretly. Whatever surprise I was about to face, I knew one thing for certain. Joshua had expected this confrontation. Maybe he even predicted Jenna's vulnerability to his brother's influence. The real question was whether he had prepared me well enough to handle a fight I had never seen coming. Ellis guided me past the main stables toward an old barn I had yet to explore. Unlike the recently renovated buildings on the rest of the estate, this one kept its original rustic charm, intentionally left untouched to appear unimportant. Your husband was a cautious man, Ellis said, producing an old iron key. After his brother's first visit last year, he became even more careful. They visited before? Joshua never mentioned that. Ellis nodded with a somber expression. They arrived unannounced once they learned about the oil discovery on nearby properties. Your husband was here, overseeing the construction of the art studio. At first, they didn't recognize him. He had grown a beard during his treatment. The casual mention of Joshua's treatment brought a fresh wave of pain through me. While I had been unaware, teaching high school literature in Minnesota, my husband was here, sick and creating this sanctuary, while also shielding himself from his predatory brothers. What had happened? He watched them from a distance, then left without revealing himself. That night, he adjusted the plans for the property. Ellis unlocked the barn door. Starting with this, the door swung open to show an ordinary-looking barn interior with hay bales, old farm tools, and dust motes dancing in the sunlight, streaming through gaps in the walls. Ellis moved confidently toward the back corner, moving aside some bales to reveal a trap door set into the dirt floor. Your husband installed this entrance last winter. The workers thought they were building a root cellar. He pulled the heavy door up, exposing a sturdy wooden staircase leading down into darkness. After you, Mrs. Mitchell. With curiosity outweighing my hesitation, I followed Ellis down the stairs. At the bottom, he flipped a switch and the lights flickered on, revealing a concrete tunnel stretching ahead into the earth. What is this place? Your husband called it insurance. I think it's brilliant. Ellis signaled for me to follow as he walked along the tunnel. The Mitchell brothers believe they know the full extent of the property and its worth. They are mistaken. The tunnel extended roughly 50 yards before opening into a large concrete room filled with filing cabinets, a desk with computer equipment, and walls covered with maps and documents. Welcome to Joshua's war room, Ellis said, a trace of pride in his voice. This is where he had gathered everything about his brothers, their business activities, and the true value of Maple Creek Farm. I moved to the nearest wall, where a detailed survey map was pinned, displaying not only the farm, but also the surrounding properties for miles around. Red markings showed the location of oil deposits, with handwritten notes about their depth, quality, and the difficulties of extraction. I looked at Ellis and said, I don't understand. Joshua knew about the oil. At first, he didn't. He bought this property simply to renovate it for you, but about 18 months ago, when Peterson's land revealed signs of oil, he secretly hired geologists to survey Maple Creek. Ellis pointed to the map. They discovered something unexpected. The largest deposit wasn't beneath the eastern part where everyone was drilling. Instead, it was here, under the western acres that seemed worthless. I examined the map more closely, noticing how many red marks concentrated on the rugged area of the land, which appeared unusable. This section stretched into the foothills, land that Robert hadn't even mentioned when proposing to divide the property. The oil company surveys missed it because the formation there is unusual, deeper, and shaped differently than they had anticipated, Ellis explained. Your husband confirmed it with 3 independent experts, sworn to secrecy. This means the property is even more valuable than his brothers realize, many times over, but that's not all. Ellis moved over to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Joshua had spent years documenting questionable business practices by all 3 brothers, tax evasion, insider trading, and misuse of client funds. There was enough evidence to destroy their reputation if it ever got out. I looked through the well-organized documents, noticing Joshua's careful and detailed approach to solving problems. There were email printouts, financial reports, and sworn statements from former employees. He had built a watertight case against his brothers. Why would he gather all this material for protection? Ellis sat at the desk and gestured for me to take the other chair. He knew they would try to take the farm once he was gone. He wanted you to have some power over them. I thought about Robert's self-assured attitude, Alan's legal strategies, along with their swift efforts to turn Jenner against me, seemed well planned. He predicted many things, but not everything, Ellis said quietly. He didn't expect them to reach your daughter so quickly. The memory of Jenna's betrayal stung deeply. They are controlling her with half-truths and promises of wealth, while also playing on her grief. Ellis added she lost her father. Suddenly, they are offering her a sense of connection to him through shared blood and history. That is a strong lure for a young woman mourning her father. He was right. Jenna had always been Daddy's girl, sharing Joshua's sharp mind and love for puzzles. His death left her feeling lost, vulnerable to anyone offering her a link to him. What do I do now? I asked almost to myself. That depends on what you want, Ellis answered. You could sell everything, property, oil rights, the entire estate, and walk away with a fortune, but perhaps you would be forever distant from your daughter. You could challenge the brothers legally using this advantage, which might win the dispute but could deepen family wounds. Or what else? You might follow the same approach your husband always took. Think 3 steps ahead and find a strategy no one expects. I kept this in mind as I continued to examine the war room. On the desk stood a framed photograph I had never seen before, showing Joshua as a teenager, proudly standing beside a stunning chestnut horse. His face was lit with a pure and innocent happiness I rarely saw in the man I married. That's Phoenix, Ellis said, noticing where I was focused on the picture. Your husband's horse when he was young. It was the only bright spot in his childhood, from what he told me. His brother sold a horse while Joshua was away at school just to hurt him. Suddenly, another piece of the story fell into place. Joshua's support of my love for horses, despite not being personally interested, made sense. The 6 beautiful animals in the stable were not just a gift, they were his way of reclaiming something precious that his brothers had taken from him. I picked up the photograph, a plan starting to take shape in my mind. Ellis, does the laptop with Joshua's videos work down here? He nodded. There's a secure Wi-Fi network all over the property. Your husband made sure of that. Good. I need to watch the next few videos sooner than planned. Then I'd like you to arrange a meeting for me. With whom? First, my daughter, alone and away from her uncles, then my attorney, and finally. I looked at the wall of evidence Joshua had gathered against his brothers. I think I'd like to speak with those oil company representatives who have been making offers on the property. Ellis smiled for the first time since we entered the hidden bunker. You're planning something your husband would approve of. I'm planning something worthy of the man who loved me enough to create all this. I corrected my tone, steady and determined, and I will need your help. Whatever you need, Ellis promised. Your husband saved my life once years ago and gave me this job when no one else was willing to take a chance on an ex-con trying to rebuild his life. I owe him everything, and in turn, I owe you. This was another side of Joshua I had not known. His quiet kindness extended beyond our immediate family, touching lives I had never even heard about. As we left the bunker and carefully covered the entrance again, I felt a strange sense of connection to my late husband. Not the grief that had dominated the past weeks, but a partnership that somehow continued beyond death. He had left me not just a property and financial security, but tools and knowledge to forge my own path forward. The Mitchell brothers believed they were facing a naive widow who was out of her depth. They had no idea what was coming. Over the next 48 hours, I hardly slept, driven instead by determination and the growing clarity of my plan. I watched a full week's worth of Joshua's videos in one night, each revealing more about his strategy and how far ahead he thinks. He warned in one recording that they would try to divide and conquer, almost as if he was speaking directly to my current situation. Robert will be the friendly face, Alan the legal threat, David the quiet observer, and they will focus on Jenna. She's the easiest way for them to create trouble and shake your position. In another video, he explained the western part of the property, the land his brothers had intentionally left out of their proposal, claiming it was worthless. To most, this land appears insignificant, just some scrubby hills and rocky terrain with hard-to-reach spots. That's precisely why it's perfect. They don't pay attention to what looks useless. Armed with Joshua's insights and my own growing understanding of what I was facing, I arranged to meet Jenna at a small cafe in the nearby town, just 20 miles from the farm. It was a neutral ground, away from both the influence of the Mitchell brothers and the emotional pull of Joshua's carefully built sanctuary. She arrived 15 minutes late, already adopting a defensive posture before she even sat down. I can't stay long. Uncle Robert is taking me to meet the family attorney this afternoon. I repeated mildly, Uncle Robert, you've become quite close in just 3 days. She blushed. They've been nothing but kind and welcoming, which is more than I can say for you. You're treating them like enemies instead of Dad's family. I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. Do you remember that art history course you took in your sophomore year? The one where the professor talked about perspective how your position completely changes what you see. What does that have to do with anything? You've only heard their side of the story. I want you to consider that there might be another perspective, your father's. Dad's gone, she said bluntly, pain flashing across her face. And he clearly didn't trust either of us enough to tell us about this place while he was alive. I reached into my bag and took out a tablet. Actually, he left something for both of us. What is it? Your father made videos, Jenna. Hundreds of them. Messages to guide me, us, after he was gone. I turned the tablet so she could see the screen, reading the specific video Joshua had labeled for Jenna when she needed it. Her face went pale. He made videos. He knew he was dying, I said quietly, finally revealing the truth. He was diagnosed 3 years ago with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. He chose not to tell us, wanting to spare us the sight of him declining. That's impossible, she replied uncertainly. He would have told me. Watch the video, Jenna, I urged softly. Hear it from him. With shaky fingers, she pressed the play button. Joshua's face appeared healthy and lively, his eyes crinkling with a smile that was uniquely his. Hello, my wonderful girl. If you're watching this, then I'm no longer here, and knowing you, you're probably upset about all the secrets I kept. He chuckled softly. You never liked being kept in the dark about anything, even when you were little. Tears formed in Jenna's eyes as her father went on. I should have told you I was sick. I should have given you more time to prepare, to ask all those questions you're so good at asking. But I was selfish. I wanted our last years together to be normal, not weighed down by my diagnosis. I hope someday you'll forgive me for that decision. Joshua shifted slightly, leaning closer to the camera. But there's something else you need to know. Something about my brothers I've never shared with you. Our arrangement wasn't just some small family conflict. Jenna, when I was 19, they stole my share of our father's estate. They used my name on fake documents while I was away at college. And when I found out, I threatened to reveal the truth. They responded by threatening to make me look like I was involved willingly. Jenna's hand covered her mouth, her eyes fixed on the screen. I left Canada, changed my name slightly from Jonathan to Joshua, and started fresh in Minnesota. I met your mother, built a life, and raised you. That was enough. His face hardened. But my brothers never changed. Whatever they're telling you now, keep this in mind. They have wanted control of the family property for many years, not out of love, but driven by greed. They'll use anyone, even my daughter, to get it. The video ended, pausing on Joshua's worried face. Jenna sat still, tears quietly falling down her cheeks. He was protecting us, she whispered at last. All this time, it was for more than just his illness. I nodded softly. Your uncles are not truly part of the family they claim to be. They are opportunists, seeing you as the easiest way to get what they want. She wiped away her tears, her face now showing anger instead of grief. They've been deceiving me, haven't they? About everything. Not everything. The farm is worth millions. That part is true. But they haven't told you about the western section, which they conveniently left out of their proposal, or the real size of the oil deposits there. Understanding appeared in her eyes. They're trying to deceive us, I asked, hope flickering. Does that mean you're now on my side? Mom, I've never stopped being on your side. She looked down, ashamed. I wanted to feel connected to Dad through his family. They had stories about him as a child, photos I'd never seen before. I understand, I told her, reaching across the table to gently hold her hand. Grief makes us vulnerable in ways we can't predict, but now we need to be smarter than they are. Together, Jenna straightened up, her expression shifting from shock to resolve. So much like her father that my heart felt a pang. Our plan, I asked with a smile, sensing a flicker of real confidence for the first time since all this began. First, we will meet with my lawyer this evening. Not the family lawyer your uncles prefer, but someone recommended by Joshua's lawyer in Minnesota. Then tomorrow, we have a meeting with Western Plains Energy, the oil company. Why? Because knowledge gives us power. And at this moment, we hold information your uncles are unaware of. We know exactly where the oil reserves are and how much oil there is. I showed her the geological surveys from Joshua's war room. They seem to think they're dealing with an uninformed widow and a naive niece. It's time to reveal to them exactly who they're really up against. For the first time since Joshua's death, Jenna burst out laughing. It was a genuine sound of amusement. Dad always said you were the smartest person he ever met. Beneath that quiet high school teacher was a clever strategist capable of outsmarting anyone when truly motivated. Did he really say that? I asked, surprised. All the time, she replied with a smile, wiping away the last of her tears. He also mentioned that the worst mistake anyone could make was to underestimate Catherine Mitchell. As we left the cafe together, I sensed a change in the balance of this conflict. The Mitchell brothers had unintentionally brought us closer instead of driving us apart. They had no idea that their initial success with Jenna had only prepared the way for their eventual defeat. Later that evening, with Jenna at my side, I shared my full plan with the lawyer Joshua had chosen specifically for this kind of situation. His face shifted from curiosity to clear admiration as he understood the entire scope of my proposal. "Mrs. Mitchell," he finally said, "your husband predicted you would surprise me with your strategic thinking." He was right. My husband, I replied, was correct about many things, including, it seemed, his belief that I could not only survive his passing, but also come out of grief and betrayal's trial stronger. The Mitchell brothers arrived at Maple Creek Farm right on time, 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 days after I met with Jenna. Their black SUV made its way over the gravel driveway with the confidence of men who believed success was guaranteed. Behind it followed a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize, probably their lawyer or financial advisor. I watched from the large window in the great room, dressed not in the casual clothes they had seen before, but in a fitted suit I had bought specifically for this meeting. Appearances count when planning a takeover, and I meant to show myself not as a grieving widow, but as the powerful opponent Joshua always knew I could be. "They're here," I called to Jenna, who stepped out of the kitchen dressed sharply in a dark blue outfit. Her father's watch, one of his most cherished possessions, was prominently on display on her wrist. "Ready?" she asked, a mix of nerves and resolve in her face. "Absolutely," I said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Remember, let them lead themselves into a corner first." Ellis came from the back of the house. The others arrived through the service entrance. "They are arranged in the dining room as you requested." I nodded in acknowledgement. Perfect timing. The doorbell rang, and Ellis moved smoothly to answer it, displaying the courteous respect of someone familiar with his role in this well-rehearsed scene. "Good morning, gentlemen," I heard him greet them. "Mrs. Mitchell and Miss Jenna are expecting you. Please, this way." They entered with the relaxed confidence of men used to taking control of such situations. Robert led the way, with Alan following closely, carrying his usual legal documents, and David bringing up the rear. Behind them strode a silver-haired man in a fine suit, exuding corporate authority. Catherine. Robert nodded in greeting, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "We appreciate you agreeing to meet with us. This is Harrison Wells, CEO of Northern Extraction. We thought it would be helpful to have an industry expert join our discussion about the property's potential. As expected, they brought an oil executive to impress me with technical jargon and market valuations. Predictable. I responded pleasantly, saying, "How thoughtful. I've already arranged the dining room for our meeting." "Shall we?" I led them through the house, observing their evaluative glances at the renovation Joshua had completed. In the formal dining room, a large table was laid out with documents at each place, water carafes, and a coffee service, everything arranged professionally. "Please sit down," I indicated. "I believe we have much to discuss." As they settled into their chairs, still showing confidence, I remained standing at the head of the table. "Before we start," I said, "I want to thank you for your previous proposal. It was very informative." Robert's smile widened, clearly taking my comment as a sign of submission. "We are glad you've taken the time to consider our offer with Mr. Wells's expertise. We can talk about the best way to divide the property's assets." "Yes, division," I thought as I picked up a remote control from the table. "That's exactly what I wanted to discuss." I pressed a button, and a hidden screen lowered from the ceiling at the back of the room. The brothers looked at each other in surprise. They clearly hadn't expected this level of preparation. If you would, please, look at the presentation. I continued, pressing the remote again. A detailed map of Maple Creek Farm appeared on the screen, showing property boundaries, topographical features, and geological layers. This is the full survey of Maple Creek, I explained. Alan shifted uncomfortably. All 2,200 acres, not just the eastern 800 acres you mentioned in your proposal, he said. The western part is rocky terrain that cannot be developed. We left it out to keep things simple. I smiled, except for one small detail. Another click revealed a map with locations of oil deposit overlaid. This showed the complete geological survey from Joshua's war room, indicating the large oil reserve beneath the worthless western acres. Harrison Wells sat up straighter, his professional mask slipping as he leaned forward to examine the projection with sudden, serious interest. As you can see, I continued calmly, the main oil deposit lies mostly underneath the western section, which you so kindly offered to leave out of our fair division. Robert's face reddened. These surveys are not reliable. The northern extractions analysis clearly showed. And then a new voice interrupted as the connecting door swung open. These surveys have been confirmed by 3 separate geological teams. The Mitchell brothers gasped in shock as Thomas Reeves, CEO of Western Plains Energy, the main rival of Northern Extraction, entered the room, flanked by my lawyer and 2 people dressed in business suits. "What is going on?" Robert demanded, leaning back slightly in his chair. I replied calmly, "This is a meeting to discuss the true value and future of Maple Creek Farm. Mr. Reeves has shown a keen interest in the land's potential, especially after reviewing the complete geological reports my husband prepared." Harrison Wells cast a betrayed glance at the Mitchell brothers. "You told me you had exclusive rights to negotiate for this property," he said. "They don't," my lawyer responded smoothly, as he placed additional documents on the table. "Mrs. Mitchell holds unquestioned title to the entire property, including all mineral rights. The documents shown to you by the Mitchell brothers carry no legal validity whatsoever." Robert sharply slammed his hand on the table. "This property has belonged to the Mitchell family for generations. Joshua had a moral duty, moral obligations." Jenna spoke for the first time, her voice firm despite her white-knuckle grip on her water glass. "Like the moral obligation you had to my father when you stole his inheritance, forged his signature on loan papers, or threatened to frame him for your financial crimes if he exposed you." The brothers froze, their faces draining of color. "What exactly is she talking about?" Harrison Wells asked, looking increasingly uneasy. "Perhaps these will help clarify things," I said, nodding to my lawyer, who handed out sealed envelopes to everyone at the table, copies of documentation my husband kept concerning certain past transactions involving the Mitchell family assets. "I believe the time limit for bringing legal action has passed on some of these issues, but Canadian financial regulators might still find others quite relevant." Alan opened his envelope and read the papers with growing concern. "These are private family matters," he suddenly exclaimed, "and have no bearing on our current discussion." "On the contrary," I replied, finally taking my seat at the head of the table. "They reveal a pattern of dishonest behavior that directly affects your credibility in these negotiations. Such behavior continued when you intentionally misled Mr. Wells about your authority to negotiate for this property." The room grew quiet as the Mitchell brothers realized how thoroughly they were exposed. Joshua had documented everything, their past crimes against him, their recent schemes, and their efforts to take valuable assets while pretending to be generous. "What do you want?" Robert finally asked, his confident front breaking apart. "I want you to leave Maple Creek Farm and never come back," I replied simply. "I want you to stop all efforts to challenge my ownership or influence my daughter. In return, these documents will stay private, only accessible to the people in this room." Harrison Wells suddenly stood up. "I believe my company's involvement in this situation has been based on incomplete and possibly fraudulent information. Please excuse me, Mrs. Mitchell. I will contact you directly if there are any future discussions about mineral rights." He gave a look of disgust at the brothers before leaving. Robert's face hardened as he watched his ally from the oil company walk away. "You have no idea what you're doing, Catherine. The costs to extract in the western section are too high." The logistics alone, Thomas Reeves pointed out, Western Plains has developed new extraction technology that is specially designed for these geological formations. We are ready to present Mrs. Mitchell with an offer that recognizes both the difficulties and the remarkable potential of this property. As the meeting went on, shifting from the Mitchell brothers' planned takeover to my carefully organized counterattack, I caught Jenna's gaze across the table. Her subtle smile said everything: pride, a sense of victory, and the bittersweet realization that Joshua had prepared us for this moment even after he was gone. By the time the Mitchell brothers left, 2 hours later, defeated and exposed, with the settlement agreement my lawyer had prepared in advance, binding them legally, the future of Maple Creek Farm was secured exactly as Joshua had planned. It was not divided among greedy relatives or sold to the highest bidder, but protected as a legacy for the family he had chosen and loved, Jenna and me. As their vehicles drove away down the driveway, Ellis appeared beside me. "Your husband would be proud," he said softly. "You outsmarted them just as he believed you would." I watched the dust settle on the driveway, feeling a strange mix of emotions: triumph mixed with grief, strength rising from vulnerability. "We're not finished yet," I responded, thinking of the video still on Joshua's laptop and the future that lay ahead. This was just the first challenge, but it was a victory we had won clearly, using tools Joshua had carefully prepared and the strength he had always believed I possessed, even when I couldn't see it myself. The weeks after the Mitchell brothers' defeat flew by in a hurry of everyday details. Finalizing legal papers for our settlement, holding meetings with Western Plains Energy to plan a fair extraction deal, and thoroughly taking stock of everything Joshua had built at Maple Creek Farm. Jenna stayed with me throughout all of this, her initial anger over her father's secrets shifting into gratitude for his foresight. We established a daily routine of watching his videos together each morning, both of us drawing comfort and guidance from his presence after he was gone. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset behind the western hills that now held our newfound wealth, Jenna asked, "Did you have any idea? Did I suspect at all that Dad was unwell or that he had planned all of this?" I carefully thought about the question, trying to recall any missed clues from my memories. There were small signs that now seem clear in hindsight. His insistence on updating our wills 3 years ago. The way he sometimes looked at us during dinner, almost memorizing our faces. His sudden fascination with taking pictures of ordinary moments. Jenna said with a gentle smile that she thought he was simply going through a midlife phase of appreciation. In a way, she was right, but not for the reasons we initially believed. I sipped my tea, recalling that the biggest change was how he stopped postponing things. Your father was always someone who believed someday was just around the corner for personal matters. Someday we'll take that trip to Europe. Someday he'd learn to sail. Someday we'd renovate the kitchen, I thought. Then unexpectedly, he began actually doing things instead of just talking about them. Like buying this place, Jenna nodded. Creating something with permanence. Exactly, I believed it was because he finally felt financially stable enough to pursue some of his dreams. I shook my head, still trying to grasp the full extent of what he had been hiding. I never suspected he was racing against time, building a legacy, because he knew he wouldn't be here to see it fully realized. The representatives from Western Plains Energy were quite surprised when I explained my conditions for granting them access to the oil beneath our land. Instead of selling the mineral rights outright for a lump sum, as many landowners do, I had insisted on a detailed agreement. My focus was on protecting the environment, using sustainable methods to extract the oil, and setting up a substantial trust to restore the land once the oil was gone. Mrs. Mitchell, their main negotiator, commented, "These terms are very unusual in the industry." To which I replied, "Perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms." Drawing on Joshua's quiet confidence, "The oil has been underground for millions of years. It can remain there until we decide on responsible ways to retrieve it." To my surprise, Thomas Reeves, the CEO, was more interested than discouraged by my approach. "Your husband mentioned you were once an environmental science major before switching to literature. He recalled that you insisted on doing things properly, not just for profit." This was another insight into Joshua's careful planning. It was clear he had communicated with select industry leaders, preparing the ground for negotiations that he knew would take place after his death. A month after receiving my inheritance, I stood in the art studio Joshua had built. Sunlight poured in from the north-facing windows, casting light on a blank canvas on the easel. After many years away from painting, I had finally picked up a brush again. At first I hesitated, but then my confidence grew. Today's subject patiently awaited in the paddock visible through the studio windows. Midnight has come, and the impressive Fian stallion Joshua was bought because he reminded me of a painting I admired 20 years ago. Ellis had been helping me learn to ride once more, my middle-aged body resisting at first and gradually adjusting to the forgotten rhythms of horsemanship. Mom. Jenna appeared in the doorway holding her laptop. The video today is different. I think you should watch it alone. I put down my paintbrush, feeling curious. We had developed a routine of watching Joshua's daily messages together during breakfast, finding comfort in sharing the moment. But how is this different? It's specifically marked for month 2, day 15. He titled it, When Catherine Starts Painting Again. She handed me the computer with a gentle smile. He knew you would come back to it eventually, alone in the studio, surrounded by the tools of a passion I was rekindling. I opened the laptop and pressed play. Joshua appeared, seated in this very room before any of the art supplies had been placed, the space empty except for the beautiful windows. Hello, my love, he began, his smile warm and close. If you're watching this, you found your way back to your art, back to the passion you set aside for our family many years ago. I gently touched the screen, tears coming to my eyes. I've been reflecting a lot about legacy, he continued. What we leave behind, what impressions we make on the world. Most people think of legacy in terms of children, wealth, or achievements. But there is another kind, one that involves enabling possibilities for those we care about. He pointed to the empty room around him. This space isn't finished yet, but in my mind, I can see it completed, filled with light, color, and your creations. I imagine you standing in front of an easel, brush in hand, finally giving shape to the visions you've carried inside you all these years. I looked at the half-finished portrait of Midnight on my easel, surprised at how closely it matched Joshua's imagination. I've arranged everything to give you freedom, Kat, he went on. Financial security through the oil rights, protection from my brother's interference, a beautiful space to create. But what you choose to do with that freedom, that's your legacy to build, not mine to decide. He leaned closer to the camera, his face serious. The farm, the horses, the art studio, they are not the inheritance, they are simply the tools. The true inheritance is the possibility, the opportunity to become more fully yourself without limits. I paused the video, feeling overwhelmed by how well he understood me. Joshua knew me better than I knew myself. He saw the quiet artist still alive inside me, beneath the practical teacher and dedicated mother I had become. When I started the video again, his expression had softened once more. I have one request, though it's entirely up to you whether to accept it or not. In the storage closet behind this room, there's a large canvas I ordered before I learned about my diagnosis. It's still blank, waiting for something. When you feel truly ready, I hope you'll create something for it. Something that reflects not only what you see, but also what you feel about this place. One that reminded me of where I started and will help guide you into your future. The video ended with his familiar farewell. Until tomorrow, my love. I sat quietly for several minutes, reflecting on his words. Then, driven by an impulse, I went to the storage closet and found exactly what he described. A huge blank canvas made specifically for the prominent wall in the great room. It was the ideal size to make a bold statement, a focal point at the heart of the home Joshua had built. Over the following weeks, as autumn transformed the landscape with bright, warm colors, I created many sketches in an effort to capture the spirit of Maple Creek Farm and what it symbolized. None of them felt quite right until one morning, when I watched Jenna riding Midnight across the eastern meadow, something suddenly clicked. The painting began to take shape gradually. It was not a simple landscape, but a blend of real and symbolic elements. The farm, as it appears now, was painted with detailed realism in the background. In the forefront, I included several in translucent layers illustrating what existed before. The abandoned property Joshua had bought, the family farm of his childhood, and beneath all of that, the ancient land that had borne witness to many generations. Woven through these different layers of time were two riders on horseback, a man and a woman. Their faces were kept intentionally vague so they could suggest both specific journeys and universal stories of travel and change. Behind them, barely noticeable unless you knew to look, was a third figure, a young woman forging her own path forward. When the painting was finally finished, Ellis helped me hang it in the designated spot in the great room. Jenna stood back, gazing at it with tears welling in her eyes. "It's him, isn't it? And you and me," she said softly. She traced the figures of the riders with her finger from afar, the past, present, and future of this place. "Legacy," I said simply. "Not just what is left behind, but what continues on." That evening, as I watched the sunset from the porch of what had become truly my home, I felt Joshua's presence, not as a ghost or memory, but as an ongoing partnership. He had given me more than just material security. He had provided a framework for reinvention, the freedom to discover who Catherine Mitchell might become when not limited by circumstances. The oil would offer financial stability for generations to come. The farm would change under our care, and I would keep bringing beauty into the world through talents I was only beginning to rediscover. I aimed to build my own legacy alongside the one Joshua had so thoughtfully laid out. Tomorrow's video was waiting on the laptop, just another day to stay connected and guided across the boundary that kept us apart. But more and more, I found myself looking ahead rather than back, appreciating his insight, yet eager to write the next chapters of this unexpected journey on my own. The forbidden farm had become a sacred place, no longer a site of secrets and pain as Joshua once knew, but a sanctuary of hope and new beginnings, his final and greatest gift to me. Winter arrived on Maple Creek Farm with stunning beauty. Fresh snow covered the gentle hills and fields, ice crystal formed intricate patterns on the windows, and smoke softly curled from the stone chimney into the clear Alberta sky. I had chosen to stay through the season instead of heading back to Minnesota, wanting to enjoy the full cycle of the seasons on this land that had unexpectedly become my home. Jenna had reluctantly returned to her life in Minneapolis, as her marketing firm couldn't grant her an indefinite leave of absence. Still, our daily video calls kept us connected through FaceTime. The three of us remained in touch. Jenna from her city apartment, me from the farmhouse living room, and Joshua's recorded presence, linking us across time and distance. "The Western Hills look especially stunning after a fresh snowfall," Joshua said in this afternoon's video, filmed exactly 1 year earlier in the same room. If Ellis has kept up with the snowmobile maintenance in the equipment barn, maybe it's time to take it out to the ridge with the view over the valley. The sunrise view there makes waking early truly worthwhile. I couldn't help but smile at his continued knack for predicting my experiences. Just yesterday, Ellis mentioned the snowmobile and offered to show me the winter trails Joshua had mapped out across the property. 6 months had passed since I confronted the Mitchell brothers. True to our agreement, they kept their distance, though my lawyer sometimes forwarded messages from their legal team. These were mainly technical questions about property boundaries as Western Plains Energy started preliminary work on the eastern side of the farm. The oil extraction project was moving forward with careful consideration. The company was respecting our unusual arrangement that prioritized environmental protection over quick profits. Thomas Reeves had become an unexpected ally. His initial business interest had turned into genuine respects for the sustainable plan Joshua envisioned, and I had insisted upon. My phone suddenly rang, pulling me from these thoughts. Jenna's name appeared on the screen. "Is everything all right?" I answered right away, feeling worried because of the unexpected call. Our usual daily video chat wasn't due for a few hours. She hesitated and said her voice sounded tense. "I just had an odd visit from Uncle David." I held the phone tighter. "David, what did he want?" "Officially, he came to say sorry for trying to manipulate me against you." She paused. "But something didn't sit right about the whole conversation." He kept asking subtle questions about the farm, whether I visited often, if I'd seen anything unusual around the property. Did you tell him anything? Of course not. I answered vaguely and didn't give much away. She lowered her voice. Mom, I think they're planning something. It felt like they were gathering information. A cold shiver ran through me, unrelated to the winter weather outside. The Mitchell brothers had been suspiciously quiet over the past few months. Maybe too quiet for men used to fighting for what they wanted. I'll inform Ellis and increase security, I assured her. And I'll have my attorney reach out to theirs with a reminder about our agreement's terms. There's something else, Jenna added hesitantly. David mentioned that Robert has been ill, some heart condition needing surgery. He tried to appeal to my sympathy, implying that family should unite in tough times. The same heart condition that had claimed Joshua, the genetic hypertrophic cardiomyopathy he inherited from his father. I wondered if Robert had kept his diagnosis from his brothers, just as Joshua had hidden his from us. Be cautious, Jenna. This may be genuine, or it might be another manipulation tactic. That's what I thought. She sighed. I despise being suspicious of every interaction with Dad's family. It shouldn't feel this way. After I finished the call, I walked to the window looking out at the snow-covered driveway, feeling a knot of unease form in my stomach. The Mitchell brothers had shown themselves to be ruthless and cunning. Their apparent retreat might just be a clever move to regroup. I immediately called Ellis, sharing Jenna's worries. His reply was steady and determined as always. I'll inform the security team and check the perimeter cameras, he said. We had those systems in place specifically for situations like this. Joshua's precautions included discreet but thorough security all around the property, with cameras at every entry and motion detectors to cover the most likely approaches. At the time, I thought it was overkill. Now I was thankful for his foresight. That evening, I found myself drawn to the hidden bunker beneath the barn, searching Joshua's carefully organized records for guidance. If the Mitchell brothers were planning to make another move for Maple Creek Farm, perhaps he had also anticipated such a scenario. In the quiet room filled with filing cabinets and maps, I looked for anything indicating ongoing threats after the settlement. At the back of Joshua's desk drawer, I came across a folder labeled simply, "If they return," written in his precise handwriting. Inside was a detailed plan of action, steps to take if his brothers broke the agreement, including pre-written legal injunctions, contact details for Canadian authorities who had previously looked into their financial dealings, and, quite unexpectedly, a sealed letter addressed to Robert Mitchell. Attached to the envelope was a note in Joshua's handwriting, clipped with a paper clip. It read, "A last resort, only deliver if absolutely necessary." I wondered what my husband had written to his older brother that was so powerful or damaging it should only be used as a final measure. The envelope was sealed, leaving me to ponder the final mystery Joshua had left for me, something to be uncovered only if truly required by circumstances. I went back to the main house with the sealed letter safely in my pocket, my thoughts busy considering different options and plans. Outside, soft snow continued to fall, adding a fresh, white blanket to the winter scenery. The next morning, Ellis knocked on my door just as I was finishing breakfast. "We have visitors," he said, looking serious. All three Mitchell brothers, along with two men I didn't recognize, were at the gate. He nodded toward the entrance. "They're asking to come inside. Robert says it's a personal family matter and not about the property dispute." I moved to the large window in the living room, which looked out toward the gates in the distance. Two vehicles were parked there, the familiar black SUV and a smaller plain sedan. "What do you think they really want?" I asked Ellis. He answered sharply, "Not something good. But if we refuse to see them, it might cause trouble. It's better to manage the situation on our own terms." I noticed my hand unconsciously touching the letter in my pocket. I instructed the security to stay alert, but keep their presence discreet. They should only approach the main house. No access was allowed to the other buildings. As Ellis went to relay these instructions, I called my attorney to let him know about the unexpected visit. Then I reached out to Jenna to warn her that her uncles had arrived at the farm less than a day after David's casual visit to her. She immediately asked, "Dutsasto, do you want me to come?" Offering to catch the next flight, I decided, no, stay where you are. This might be exactly what they want, to get both of us here, cut off from our legal support. Through the window, I watched as the gates opened, allowing 2 vehicles to drive up the long driveway. Gathering my courage, I went to my bedroom to get one more item Joshua had left for situations like this: a small digital recorder disguised as a decorative brooch. Whatever the Mitchell brothers wanted, I was determined to record every word they spoke. When the doorbell sounded, I was already waiting in the main room, sitting quietly in an armchair that faced the door. The recorder was clipped to my sweater, and the mysterious letter was securely tucked in my pocket. Ellis answered the door politely and invited our unannounced visitors inside. Robert stepped in first, looking noticeably thinner than the last time I saw him, his face pale beneath his tan. Alan and David followed, their faces carefully made neutral. The 2 strangers brought up the rear. One carried a medical kit, suggesting he was a doctor, while the other held a leather folder typical of a lawyer. "Catherine," Robert said as he nodded a quiet greeting, his voice softening from its usual authoritative tone. "Thank you for seeing us without an appointment. Family often seems to arrive unexpectedly." I responded calmly, "Please have a seat." "Ellis, could you please bring some coffee for our guests?" As they settled onto the sofas opposite my chair, I noticed the tension in their bodies, especially how Alan kept throwing worried glances at Robert. Whatever had brought them here, it seemed to revolve around the eldest Mitchell. "I'll be straightforward," Robert said once Ellis left for the kitchen. "I've been diagnosed with the same heart condition that took Joshua, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's inherited." So Jenna's information had been correct. I kept a calm expression, waiting for him to go on. "My condition is advanced. The doctors say I have about 6 months without treatment, but with the right care, I might have several years." He pointed to the man with the medical bag. "This is Dr. Harmon, my heart specialist, and Mr. Pearson, my attorney." "I'm sorry to hear about your health issues," I said gently, "but I don't quite understand why this brings you to Maple Creek Farm." Robert exchanged glances with his brothers before continuing. "I need a heart transplant, Catherine, but there's a complication. Our family has a rare blood type and tissue markers that make finding a compatible donor extremely difficult." A growing suspicion started to form in my mind. That sounds difficult, but again, why come to me with this? Because Dr. Harmon explained professionally, based on the medical records we've reviewed, your late husband would have been a perfect match for Robert. And considering the genetic factors involved, there's a good chance that your daughter might also be compatible. The boldness of their request struck me like a punch. They wanted to test Jenna, to use my daughter's body as a possible hope for the man who had tried to steal her inheritance and turn her against me. "You want my daughter to be tested as a potential donor for you?" I asked, making sure the recorder was capturing every word of this extraordinary conversation. "Just basic blood tests to see if she is a match," Alan smoothly added. "Nothing invasive at this stage. And if she matches," I pressed, "what happens then?" "Then we would hope she might consider becoming a living donor," Robert replied. "The procedure involves transplanting part of her liver, with very little risk to her. Her liver would grow back completely in just a few months." I sat in stunned silence, unable to believe their astonishing sense of entitlement. After trying to manipulate, deceive, and take advantage of us, they now expected my daughter to go through major surgery for a man she hardly knew, a man who had tried to turn her against her own mother. "Let me make sure I understand," I finally said, my voice steady, despite the chaos inside me. "You tried to take this property away from me, spread lies and half-truths to turn my daughter against me, and now you're here asking if she will undergo surgery to save your life." Robert at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I understand how this looks, but we are still family, Catherine. Blood connects us whether we like it or not." "Blood," I repeated slowly, thinking about Joshua's videos, his difficult past with these men, and his strong desire to protect Jenna and me from their harmful influence. "You're right about one thing, Robert. Blood does bind us, but not in the way you believe." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the sealed letter, noticing a flicker of recognition in Robert's eyes. "Joshua left this for you," I said, holding it just out of his reach, "with the instruction to give it only if absolutely necessary. I think this situation qualifies." Robert stared at the sealed, envelope in my hand, confusion and a hint of fear crossing his tired face. Joshua wrote to me. Apparently, he expected that even a legal settlement wouldn't keep you away forever. I held onto the letter, not yet ready to hand it over. He had prepared for every possible outcome, including this one. An awkward silence settled in the room. Dr. Harmon shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing that he had been drawn into something more complicated than a simple medical appointment. The Mitchell brothers looked at each other, exchanging silent words. Before I give you this, I said, I want to be completely clear about what you are asking. You want my daughter, the same young woman you manipulated and lied to 6 months ago, to undergo medical tests and possibly major surgery to save your life. It sounds harsh when you put it that way, Alan interrupted. But yes, Robert's condition is serious, and family members are often the best hope for a compatible donation. Why not David or Alan? I asked, looking at the other brothers. Siblings are usually even better matches than nieces. Dr. Harmon cleared his throat. We've tested both Mr. Mitchell's brothers. Neither is compatible due to some unusual genetic factors. And there are no other siblings? I pressed, watching their reactions carefully. Are there any other family members who might be suitable donors? Another significant exchange of glances between the brothers. David looked away suddenly, as if distracted by the view outside the window. No, Robert replied firmly. No other siblings. I nodded slowly, then handed him Joshua's letter. I think you should read this before we go on with our conversation. With a slight shake of his hands, Robert broke the seal and unfolded the pages inside. His eyes scanned the first few lines, then widened in shock. Color drained from his face as he kept reading, the pages trembling noticeably in his grip. Alan leaned forward. Robert, what is it? But Robert didn't answer, fully absorbed in Joshua's words. When he finally looked up, his face had changed completely. The confident businessman was now someone confronting ghosts he thought he had long buried. How long have you known? He asked me sharply. I simply said, all I know is that Joshua left this for you, with instructions that it might be something you need someday. I looked him steadily in the eye. What exactly did my husband write? Robert handed the letter to Alan, who started reading it aloud, while David looked on over his shoulder. Their faces changed almost at the same time. First curious, then in disbelief, and finally showing signs of real shock. This can't be true, Alan finally declared, staring at Robert. Father would have told us, wouldn't he? Robert let out a bitter laugh. The same father who pitted us against each other all our lives, who played favorites depending on his mood, who enjoyed keeping secrets over our heads. I watched this exchange with growing curiosity. Whatever Joshua had revealed in that letter had clearly shaken the brothers to their core. Perhaps I suggested softly, someone should tell me what my husband wrote. Robert seemed to remember I was there. His gaze shifted back to me with a new sense of awareness. Joshua wasn't our half-brother, he was our full brother. This made no sense, I don't understand. Joshua told me your father remarried after your mother died, giving birth to you. That's why there's such an age difference between you. That was the story we all believed, Robert confirmed. But according to this letter, Joshua found out the truth while researching his heart condition. Our mother didn't die in childbirth. She left our father when Joshua was a baby, unable to bear his abusive behavior any longer. Father invented the story about her death to prevent the scandal of abandonment and to punish her by completely erasing her from his life. But there was more to it. Alan added, his careful attention to the details of law came through even as he was in shock. Joshua then uncovered that our father had another family, a relationship that started before our mother left and lasted for many years after. There was a woman in Saskatoon with whom he had 2 more children. I began to understand what this meant. 2 additional Mitchell siblings, both in their 40s now, a brother and sister, sharing our rare blood type and genetic markers, as confirmed by medical records Joshua had somehow obtained, likely without knowing their connection to you. I pieced it all together. Joshua found them, but didn't reach out. He only confirmed their existence and that they were medically compatible. Robert nodded slowly. According to this, he even had their contact information checked each year by a private investigator. making sure it was always up to date. If one of you ever needed what Jenna is asking for now, I did it for him. A compatible donor from the family you never knew about. The irony was striking. The Mitchell brothers came to ask my daughter, the niece they had tried to deceive and manipulate, for a potentially life-saving organ donation, while entirely unknown siblings existed who might offer the same medical match. There's more, David said softly, after taking the letter from Alan. Joshua writes that he only learned all this after he received his own diagnosis. He had already been planning Maple Creek Farm for you, Catherine, but discovering these other siblings strengthened his decision to free himself completely from the Mitchell family's legacy of secrets and lies. He writes that he wanted to create something honest and transparent to leave behind, something built on love rather than obligation. Tears welled in my eyes as I saw my husband's values reflected in those words. Even from beyond the grave, he was still teaching all of us about integrity and truth. So I finally said, it seems you have options other than approaching my daughter. Two half-siblings who share your medical markers. Strangers, Robert protested weakly. We don't even know these people. And whose fault is that? I replied. Your father chose to keep them a secret. You and your brothers decided to treat Joshua as less deserving than yourselves. Now you must face the consequences of those decisions. Dr. Harmon cleared his throat again. Forgive me, but from a medical point of view, any potential donor should be contacted promptly. Mr. Mitchell's condition is worsening quickly. I looked at the man before me, Robert Mitchell, once a strong and commanding figure, now weakened by illness and the falling apart of his family stories. Despite all he had done, I couldn't feel pleased by his pain. I told him Joshua wouldn't have wanted that. I asked if his half-siblings' contact details were included in the letter. Robert nodded silently. I then suggested he start there, not with demands, but with humility and honesty. He should tell them who he is, explain his medical situation, and give them the option that should be theirs to choose. Just as such a choice would be Jenna's alone, not mine or yours, if you had spoken honestly to her from the beginning. Alan asked if they refuse, then Jenna can decide for herself whether to be tested. I replied that she will make that decision fully informed, aware of all the facts and options, without any manipulation, pressure, or lies. The Mitchell brothers absorbed this quietly, the family resemblance between them and my late husband suddenly more noticeable in their humbled expressions. Joshua had shared their strong jawline and deep-set eyes, features I now saw more clearly. We'll go on, Robert finally said, rising carefully from the sofa. Thank you for this, he added, gesturing toward the letter, which David carefully folded and placed back into the envelope. As Ellis showed them out, I remained seated, reflecting on the unexpected revelation and what it might mean. Joshua had known he had other siblings, family members who might have welcomed him and shared his biological background. Still, he had chosen to keep that information private, revealing it only to protect Jenna and me after he was gone. That evening, as snow gently fell outside the windows of Maple Creek Farm, I opened the laptop to watch the day's video from Joshua. His familiar face appeared on the screen, recorded exactly a year ago in this very room. Hello, my love, he began, his smile warmly reaching across time. If I've guessed right, today might be the day my brothers finally use their medical card. They've known about my condition for years. Our father made sure to tell them when I was diagnosed as a teenager, though they never offered to help. Then I softly gasped again, surprised once more by his ability to foresee things. If they've talked to you or Jenna about donation compatibility, it means you've shown them the letter about our other siblings. His expression turned thoughtful. I had considered reaching out to them myself many times, but their lives seemed settled, their family complete. I questioned whether I had the right to disturb that with old history and biological ties that might mean nothing to them. He leaned closer to the camera. The truth is, Kat, family isn't just about blood. It's a matter of choice. I chose you and Jenna as my family. I hope that anyone Robert and the others approach will be given the same freedom to decide whether to help or not, to connect or not, without pressure or manipulation. As the video went on, Joshua expressed his thoughts on family and legacy with his usual thoughtfulness. I felt a sense of closure settling over me. The Mitchell brothers had come looking to use Jenna as a way to achieve their goals, just as they had always done with Joshua. Instead, they were forced to face the complicated web of secrets their father had created and the outcomes of their own decisions. Whether they would reach out to their newly discovered siblings with sincerity or use the same manipulative tactics they always relied on remained uncertain, but that no longer concerned me, or Joshua, or Jenna. We had broken free from the harmful patterns of the Mitchell family, forging our own legacy through Maple Creek Farm and the life we were building here. Joshua had turned his childhood prison into my safe haven, his painful past into my hopeful future. The Forbidden Farm had become sacred ground, not because of the oil beneath the soil or the financial security it brought, but because it symbolized Joshua's final victory over the family that had rejected him and the enduring love that kept him going. Spring would return to Maple Creek Farm. The horses would run freely across the green fields. Oil would be carefully extracted from the western hills, and I would keep creating art in the studio my husband had designed. Jenna would visit when she could, perhaps bringing her own children someday to ride horses and explore the land the grandfather had reclaimed. And Joshua would remain part of the legacy he had so thoughtfully built. Not just in the daily videos that would eventually come to an end, but throughout every part of this place that reflected his love, his vision, and his strong will to ensure that past mistakes would not determine the future. What once was forbidden had become treasured. What was once kept secret was now celebrated. And I, Catherine Mitchell, had become the keeper of a legacy built not on duty or kinship, but on the purest foundation of all, love that is freely given and gratefully received. Until tomorrow, my love, yes, Joshua said as the day's video ended. Until tomorrow, I whispered back, knowing that although tomorrow would bring a new video, a new message from the past, it would also bring me one step closer to the future I was now shaping. Inspired by his example and strengthened by my own growing confidence, the legacy of Maple Creek Farm carried on. It was no longer forbidden, but forever changed. Thank you very much for watching. Please share this with others who enjoy stories. Please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments if you enjoyed my story. Thank you.